Starting hands, your pre-flop foundation. Starting hands are the two private cards you're dealt, but in real poker, they're not just two cards. They're the raw material of your range. And your range is what determines how much expected value you're allowed to realize post-flop. If you ever feel like you're guessing on the flop, it usually started earlier. You entered the pot with a hand that didn't belong in that seat, against that player type, under that rake structure. Pre-flop is where we stop bleeding. In high-rake games, that's not optional. It's the whole job. What starting hands really means. A starting hand is a candidate to enter the pot. Whether you actually should play it depends on a few variables you must isolate. First, position, meaning how many players are left to act. Second, stack depth, because 100 big blinds plus plays very differently than short stacks. Third, rake, because high rake punishes thin, marginal calls. Fourth, opponent tendencies, because enits, maniacs, calling stations don't create the same expected value. Fifth, game texture, like a passive limp fest versus an aggressive 3-bet table. So when we talk about starting hands, we're really talking about starting hand selection. Which hands belong in your opening range, your calling range, your 3-betting range, and your folding range. Starting hands are a hierarchy, not a list. Bad players memorize charts. Strong players understand categories and why they win money. At a high level, your starting hands fall into a hierarchy based on how reliably they can produce strong value and how often they create expensive second-best hands. First, premium pairs, pocket aces through pocket. Queens. Win big pots, low reverse implied odds. Second, strong, Broadway, ace-king suited, ace-queen suited, king-queen suited, ace-king offsuit, make top pair with strong kicker and have high equity versus ranges. Third, medium pairs, pocket jacks through pocket sevens, valuable but more sensitive to position and 3-bet pressure. Fourth, suited connectors, 10-9 suited through 6. 5 suited, perform via implied odds and playability, not raw pre-flop equity. Fifth, suited aces, ace-5 suited through ace-2 suited, ace-9 suited through ace-6 suited. Good blockers plus nut potential, often used for 3-bet and 4-bet strategy. Sixth, trouble hands, king-jack offsuit, queen-10 offsuit, ace-10 offsuit in the wrong spot. Look pretty, make dominated top pairs, leak quietly. The key principle, the more often a hand makes dominated one-pair hands, the more it demands discipline. That's why king-jack offsuit can be a silent bankroll killer, while 7-6 suited can be a reasonable defend in the right configuration. Position changes everything. Your position is your permission slip to play more hands. When you act last, you realize equity more often. You control pot size, you capture more bluffs, and you make cleaner value bets. Early position has the opposite problem. You're volunteering to play out of position against multiple uncapped ranges. That means your opening standard must tighten. First, under the gun, play hands that tolerate pressure and multi-way pots. Think tighter, more robust. Second, cutoff and button widen because you steal blinds and realize equity better post-flop. Third, small blind, avoid loose calls. Either 3-bet or fold more than your instincts want. Fourth, big blind. You defend wider because you're priced in, but high rake still punishes junky offsuit hands. Here's the part students miss. Who is left to act is a tax. If competent, aggressive players are behind you, your marginal opens and calls lose expected value fast. Why suitedness, connectivity, and gaps matter. Two hands can look similar and play totally differently. You need to understand the properties that create expected value. First, suitedness adds nut potential and equity realization. Ace-king suited is not a little better than ace-king offsuit. It's meaningfully easier to play. Second, connectivity creates straights and combo draws that win stacks. 9-8 suited has more post-flop leverage than 9-3 suited. Third, high card strength increases top pair frequency and value, but also increases domination risk when the kicker is weak. Fourth, gaps reduce straight potential. 10-8 suited is playable. 10-7 suited drops significantly because the straight paths shrink. You're not selecting a hand for preflop equity. You're selecting it for playability. How cleanly it turns equity into money in the real post-flop tree. High rake reality, the hidden filter. In high rake environments, the house takes a slice of the pot precisely when small edges matter most. That shifts the entire pre-flop ecosystem. First, speculative calls lose value because you don't win enough clean pots. Second, marginal offsuit hands become unprofitable faster. Third, aggression improves. Raising wins dead money and reduces multi-way rake traps. This is why I despise hope poker. Limping or flatting with the plan to hit something is generally a rake donation. If your plan is to set mine small pairs in a high rake, small stakes game without the right stacks and opponents, your expected value is getting taxed twice. By rake and by realization. Ranges, your real starting hands. One hand doesn't exist in isolation. Poker is range versus range. So your real starting hands are these buckets. First, open raise range, hands that profitably build a pot and can stand resistance. Second, cold call range, hands that realize equity well without initiative, and this is smaller than most players think. Third, 3-bet range, value hands plus strategically chosen bluffs, meaning blockers plus playability. Fourth, defense range, hands you continue with versus opens and 3-bets, based on price and position. When you tighten up your cold calls and add a few more disciplined 3-bets, your post-flop becomes simpler and your red line stops free-falling. That's not magic, that's structure. Hand scenario, the king-jack offsuit trap in the small blind. 6 max cash, 100 big blinds effective high rake. Hero is in the small blind with king of spades. Jack of hearts, cutoff, a taggy regular, opens to 2.5 big blinds. Button, a calling station, flats. Big blind, a nit, is still to act behind hero. This is where players torch money by seeing a flop. Hero cold calls 2 big blinds more. Big blind comes along and we go 4-way to the flop with rake looming. Flop. King of diamonds, 7 of clubs, 3 of hearts. Hero checks, cutoff C bets small, button calls. Hero now has top pair and feels priced in, but this is exactly the dominated top pair problem. Against cutoff's value and protection bets, ace-king, king-queen, pocket aces through pocket queens, occasional king-10 suited, and button's sticky range, king-jack offsuit is frequently crushed or forced into ugly turns and rivers out of position. You also have no backdoor flush and limited ability to improve cleanly. The better preflop decision is usually to 3-bet or fold from the small blind. Folding avoids reverse implied odds in a rake-heavy multi-way spot. 3-betting isolates the opener, denies button's equity, and gives you initiative, but it's still opponent-dependent. Versus a nitty cutoff, you'll lean more fold. Versus a wide opener, you can mix more 3-bets. How to think about starting hands like a pro. Stop asking, is this hand good? Ask, is this hand good here? Context dictates strategy. First, can I realize equity? Position, initiative, opponent styles. Second, do I make clean value? Top pair, that's often best, nutted draws, strong pairs. Third, do I create reverse implied odds? Dominated kickers, weak offsuit broadways. Fourth, does rake kill this line? Thin flats, multi-way speculation. If you get those answers right, your starting hands stop being a memorization exercise and start becoming a system. Key takeaway. Starting hands aren't a static chart. They're a hierarchy inside your ranges. In high-rake games, you win by entering fewer bad calls and more clean, initiative-driven pots. Let position and who's left to act filter your selection, and treat dominated offsuit broadways as a bankroll leak unless the situation clearly justifies them. Now, let's test your edge. Question 1. In this article, what does starting hands really mean beyond the 2 private cards you're dealt? Answer, starting hand selection, choosing which hands belong in your opening, calling, 3-betting, and folding ranges for the specific context. Explanation, The article frames starting hands as candidates to enter the pot, and your decision depends on variables like position, rake, and opponents. Question 2. What key principle determines when a hand demands discipline in the hierarchy of starting hands? Answer: the more often a hand makes dominated one-pair hands, the more discipline it requires. Explanation: the article highlights reverse implied odds from dominated top pairs, especially with offsuit broadways, as a major source of quiet leaks. Question 3. According to the article, why does position allow you to play more hands? Answer: acting last improves equity realization because you can control pot size, capture more bluffs, and make cleaner value bets. Explanation: the article contrasts late positions control and realization with early positions risk of playing out of position versus multiple uncapped ranges. Question 4. What does the article say high rake does to speculative calls and marginal offsuit hands? Answer: speculative calls lose value and marginal offsuit hands become unprofitable faster. Explanation: the article explains that rake takes a slice when small edges matter most. So thin, multi-way, hope poker lines get taxed heavily. Question 5. In the small blind scenario with King-Jack, offsuit facing an open and a flat in a high rake game, what pre-flop decision does the article recommend as the better approach? Answer: usually 3-bet or fold rather than cold calling. Explanation: folding avoids reverse implied odds in a rake-heavy multi-way spot, while 3-betting can isolate, deny equity, and give initiative depending on the opener. Study hard, play smart. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.